To me, it's felt like the blink of an eye, but season 1 of the new 2023 Rurouni Kenshin series has finally come to a close with its final episode, episode 24. So we're going to talk about that here, and I just want to thank everybody that has joined me for these Rurouni Kenshin reviews. I've reviewed every single episode of this season, and this will be the last one for a while, at least of the anime as far as that's concerned, because this is the end of season 1, man. So if you've been here since, when did it premiere? In July? Sometime back in the summer, back when the weather was nice and I wasn't freezing my balls off. I miss those days. Just as we're going to miss all the wholesome early adventures of Kenshin as he heads off into a new journey that will take him away from his friends that he's made after all this time. So, you know, it kind of parallels itself. Anyways, we're going to talk about this final episode. We're going to talk about what it means for the series and just kind of like an overall look at what the 2023 new Kenshin anime was kind of like from start to finish. Now, the most important thing this episode does is set us up for what is to come, basically introducing who the big bad of this series is going to be, the first major antagonist. We've had antagonists before. We've had Janae, we've had Aoshi, but Shishio is an antagonist that is going to last an entire arc of the series, and he is a big one. He means a lot for the series itself. He means a lot for Kenshin. He means a lot for the Meiji government establishment and kind of like the real big bads of the series, the government. And all of that kind of combined, Shishio is this representation of the dark and dirty secrets that the government left behind. Somebody that they used to do their dirty work and then left him for dead. And now he wants vengeance, and he has the power, influence, and basically drive and determination to get it done. He can get people to follow him. He's basically created this entire terrorist organization under the nose of the Meiji government as he's kind of risen to his own underground power during this 10-year time skip that, you know, has happened since the war. So let's talk about Shishio for a minute. So this episode first introduces us to Okubo, who is this big shot in the Japanese government at the time, and everybody knows who this guy is. This guy is one of the 3 most important figures in establishing the Meiji government, and he's the only one left. And so when Akamatsu, the assassin, sees this guy and sees that Saito is involved with him, he's like, oh shit, like this is way over our heads, man. Like, we're just this group of assassins. Like, this is crazy. You know, this is going too high up. So it's basically revealed here that Saito, this entire time, was working as a spy for the Meiji government, most specifically for Okubo, and he was meant to go see if Kenshin was going to be this guy for the job, if Kenshin was still the man that he once was, if they could still rely on Kenshin, if his skills were still up to par. And Saito took this as an opportunity to basically, well, have his long-awaited rematch, because Saito was on the opposite side of Kenshin during the war. But the thing about Saito is, the man loves his country. The man loves Japan, and he lives by his own code of conviction, which is just to slay evil immediately. So, yes, he was working undercover to join the assassination group. Once all of this was kind of laid out on the line, he took care of Atsumatsu. He took care of the guy that was hiring them. So, Saito is that guy, you know, that is going to take care of injustice and evil whenever he sees it. He just has his own specific brand of justice. And there's a lot of complexity with, you know, a guy that was on an opposing side of the war. He was on the losing side, and now he's working for the government. So there's a lot of judgment that could be thrown his way. But ultimately, Saito is doing what he feels is best to protect the regular people of his country. He doesn't want to bring people back into war. And that's kind of like the main crux of everything here is like, you know, even though the government isn't perfect, they're working to try to make things better. It's only been an establishment for 10 years. And the last thing people want is war on the streets, people dying on the streets, blood flowing on the streets, you know, to protect the people of Japan. It's kind of the ultimate goal of Okubo, Saito, and now bringing this on to Kenshin, basically explaining, look, if we don't do something about this soon, Japan is destined to fall back into chaos, and that's kind of the crux of his argument here. So not a ton is revealed about Shishio in this episode, so I'm going to keep this vague. I'm going to keep this basically what this episode shares, but after Kenshin decided to stop being the assassin in the shadows for them, well, someone had to pick up the slack. Someone had to take over his spot, so they appointed Makoto Shishio. Now, Shishio and Kenshin have never really met each other. They don't have the same sword style, and they're definitely completely different people. But Shishio was the guy to take over the major assassinations after Kenshin left. But the thing is, Shishio learned a little bit too much about the government and their secrets and everything, and so they basically, after they used him for what they wanted, they left him for dead. they burned his body alive in an attempt to kill him for good. But Shishio did not die. So that's why if you see the character, he's all wrapped up in bandages. He looks like a mummy. It's because he literally was left to die, burned to death. So this guy has a vendetta against the government. He knows a lot about the government. He has a lot of power and influence, and he is an incredibly powerful and skilled swordsman, as you will see coming up. And as you can, imply, basically saying, well, who could take over Kenshin's role? Well, obviously it's got to be somebody that's just as good, if not better than Kenshin, and that was Shishio. And so he is a ghost of the past. He is somebody that only exists because of the corruption at the time and the warring state that they were in. And so there's nobody to blame except themselves for the fact that Shishio exists. However, we are in a more peaceful time, and if Shishio is attempting to rise up and bring Japan back into war, we have to try to stop him. And, they kind of strung out their ideas of how to do that, and so they fell back on Kenshin. So this is basically like them scurrying back to him saying like, hey, we know you were the best of the best. Can you please do something about this? And that puts Kenshin in a very precarious spot. And I do like how they say, if you do this for us, we'll exempt Megumi from all of her background and all that. And so they're literally trying to manipulate Kenshin into doing this. So it's it's complex, and that's why I like it. It's well, what Shishio is going to do or is planning to do is horrendous and will cause lots of innocent people to die, so we need to stop him. However, the only reason he exists in the first place is because of the corruption of the government to begin with, and that they do this kind of shady shit to get people to do what they want to do. So who's in the right? Really nobody. It's very nuanced, it's very black and white, and that's the best kind of storytelling to me, is because that's real life. There's not really a lot of heroes and villains out there. Everything is very nuanced and, specific to each individual situation. And so Kenshin has a choice to make if he's going to try to help them or not. And Okubo says that he's going to give them a week for him to make his decision. But before Kenshin and Okubo can meet one another is the deciding factor to what makes Kenshin decide that he is going to go to Kyoto, and that's that Okubo is assassinated. And I love the way that this is done. We introduce a new character here named Sojiro. Not much is shown about him in this episode, so I don't want to say much, but you can tell he's a very young character, and he's very upbeat. He's very happy. He runs up to the stagecoach, so he's super fast. He's very, very skilled. And right before he assassinates Okubo, you notice just this smile on his face, but not so much a smile that he's sadistic and enjoys killing, but kind of this is just a day at the office for him. He's just Shishio noticed that you were trying to get Kenshin to come after him. He thinks that's a good idea, but it's not going to work. Bye. You're just what the fuck? He's just so nonchalant about what he does. But then it's even exemplified further because Shishio was already aware that there was going to be another assassination attempt on Okubo, and basically did this in a way so that it would look like those other guys killed Okubo, and nobody knows about Sojiro. Sojiro operates just like most of Shishio's group, which is in the shadows, underground. They do things, they create these assassination attempts, and this is how it was done back in the war. These assassinations were done in this kind of covert way where it's you're making moves and you're making things happen and you're changing really big things, but nobody knows about it. You live in a world of shadows, which is not a world that Kenshin is currently living in as a wanderer with Kaoru, with Sanosuke, with all these friends that he's made. That's not a world of shadows. That's not the world of the Hitokiri. So that is the pivotal moment that makes Kenshin decide that he has to do something about this. Also, Kenshin recognized about himself during his fight with Saito is that part of him still exists. With Saito, he was kind of brought back to that moment where they were fighting during the war, and it's kind of like that similar scenario, being around that similar person and being into a similar dynamic. It just kind of brings him back to that same place. So that desire, I wouldn't say desire, but that instinct is still within him. The instinct to kill, the instinct to be the Hitokiri, the instinct of who he was back in the day has not completely vanished from him, despite all of the kind of, peaceful illusion that he's gotten with all of his friends. So he decides that he is going to head to Kyoto, but he's going to do it alone because he doesn't know what's going to happen. Now, he's not leaving with the intention to kill, right? But he doesn't know if he will be forced into a situation where that could happen. And so he's basically detaching himself from the people that solidified his life as a wanderer. But the thing is, he only says goodbye to Kaoru. And that's because they both know it, even though neither will admit it, that she means the most to him. And so he says goodbye only to her and then makes his way towards Kyoto by himself. And that is where the season ends. It's a very profound moment, and it leads us into what is going to be some of the best stuff of the entire series. We have a huge, long arc ahead of us, and I can't wait to get into it. And ultimately, it is my favorite arc of Kenshin, so I can't wait to experience it once again in the new version. However, when we are comparing and contrasting this version to the original 90s anime, as I enjoy doing, I gotta say, once again, the style and aesthetic of the 90s supersedes this version by a mile. Not to mention the incorporation of the departure track, the music track when Kenshin is on the bridge, reflecting about his interaction with Janae, saying that he's going to be a manslayer till the day he dies. That's something they don't do in this version that I think is important, and I think it's a good callback that they did in the 90s version with the soundtrack, as well as they make it much more aesthetically pleasing when Kenshin says goodbye to Kaoru, because instead of just meeting in front of the dojo, they meet kind of like out, amongst the trees where there's a bunch of fireflies kind of flying around them. And it makes it a very like enhanced romantic moment as the lighting is dim, the colors are muted, and really everything is lit up by the fireflies that are surrounding them. And that moment is so engraved into my head that I almost forgot in the manga they don't show the fireflies. There's like one little panel of them, but they don't show the fireflies like around Kenshin and Kaoru. But it's such a beautiful moment. And to me, it's one of my favorite Kenshin moments of the whole series, of the original anime, just how beautiful that scene is. And Kenshin saying goodbye to Kaoru and saying he must wander once again. I just think the aesthetic is so much better in the 90s version. The music is so much better in the 90s version. And this version decides to use the ending credit song as it's happening. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a good song, but I don't think it fits the mood. I think it's too upbeat. I think it's just too energetic. It's not somber enough. It should feel like a really like pulling on the heartstrings kind of moment, and it doesn't have that same feeling in this version. And I feel like that's true if we're looking at this season as a whole, as the remake as a whole. I will say overall, I enjoy it. I like this remake. I like that we're getting more Kenshin. It's cool to see the series be manga accurate. And I think, for the most part, things are done well. However, it doesn't hold up to the standard of the 90s version. And I was really hoping by the end of Season 1, I could say, this is going to be the definitive Rurouni Kenshin anime. But now I don't think I can really say that. I think you could say this is the most manga accurate Rurouni Kenshin anime. But if I was to choose how to experience these scenes, especially for the first time, if I'm recommending somebody for the first time, the fight with Saito, Kenshin saying goodbye to Kaoru, all of it has so much more emotion and so much more flair in the original 90s anime. Now, that's not to say that Season 2 will not improve, and we might have a good comparison there between the two Kyoto arcs. And, of course, the Jinshu arc was never animated, so that can only be better in the 2023 version, but that's like Season 3 if we get there. So overall, I will say I like this version. I like it. I think it's solid, but I would say that I think the 90s version does a lot better, and the only thing that this version does better than the 90s version is no filler and manga accurate, which are big things. Those are big, very important things. As far as the 90s version, I think it just does style, aesthetic, music, all that kind of stuff better. Emotion, I think it just gives you more impact. So I think it really hits the emotional moments better with more artistic flair, whereas this version kind of gives you the accuracy of the manga. So you kind of got to pick your poison, right? I mean, you can like both. I like both. But if I was recommending to somebody for the first time, I'd probably still recommend the original. But at the end of the day, Kenshin is my second favorite manga of all time. Kenshin's one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. You know, I love Saito. I love the dynamic between Kenshin and Kaoru, and I can't wait to get to Shishio and the Jupen and all those characters. Aoshi's return. There's so much that I'm looking forward to, so I can't lie to you guys. I'm excited for a season 2, just because I want to see this story again. So I guess that'll do it for now. Let me know what you guys thought, not only of this episode, but of the season as a whole. Where does it stand up for you? Do you like it more or less than the original version? And if this was your first exposure to Kenshin, how do you feel about season 1 and where this could go? If you want to go back and rewatch the original, I would say if this is your first time, I would say this with a little bit of an asterisk, because if you go back and watch the 90s version, well, you're going to get the Kyoto arc, so you're going to spoil yourself if you want to wait, but I do think it's a good way to experience it, so it's kind of up to you. And if you want to read the manga, this episode ends at chapter 57, so you would start from chapter 58. Although I, of course, would recommend reading the manga from the beginning, but hey, if you're just too eager to see what happens next, you want to start at chapter 58. But to all my Kenshin fans out there, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you showing up week to week. It's going to be kind of hard, you know, letting this go, but, you know, it'll come back. Season 2 will be around the corner, hopefully. And if not, you know, I might have some more Kenshin videos planned for the future just in general, so keep your eyes open. So thanks for watching, guys. Please do all the stuff, like, comment, subscribe, yada, yada. Patreon, you know, all that. And I'll talk to you later, guys. Peace.